What's up, folks? Welcome back to the stream. How's it going, everybody? It's Tuesday. We're getting tactical, and yeah, we'll talk about some lists today. We got, I think, an interesting development to the metagame. Things are, kind of, in my opinion, I think progressing pretty well post the data slate. Ink behind me, she wants to be on stream too. She's yelling right now. And shaping up in what is, I think, for the most part, a pretty expected way. But it is nice to go over and talk about exactly what kind of changes we see now that we are a good 2 weeks into the new post-data slate base of 40k. And honestly, I think that it's looking pretty good. Chat, I think we're in a pretty good spot. We have a lot of diversity. There's a lot of interesting builds out there. And yeah, it's going to be sweet to talk about. So thanks, everyone, for coming hanging out. How's it going, everybody? Desert Glory's in chat. What's up? Thanks, everyone, for coming to chill. When did we hit 40k subs? Last Monday, I think. So a week ago. I do have a giveaway planned, which I thought I was going to get to plan next week or last week. Unfortunately, didn't happen. Ran totally out of time. But yeah, if you stick around, I'm going to have a video out as soon as I have the opportunity to assemble it all together. I have a bunch of stuff to give away. Friggin' sick. So thanks, everyone, for getting us to 40k subs. The meme number for a 40k channel. That's very exciting. But yeah, on the whole, it's going to be sweet. Did the Spore mines do well? I did play some Spore mines over the weekend. I didn't do great. Well, I went 2-1. I mean, it was fine. But I played an almost perfect mirror match, and I ended up going down. It was I was playing High Fleet Behemoth, Spore Mines, and Termagants and things like that to give all my monsters objectives secured. My opponent was playing Leviathan, which was much better in the mirror match, unfortunately. All that on top of some bad dice, and I mean, obviously. Good play on my opponent's part. I went down. That was to Sacred Defiler, who plays a lot in the on the Discord server and also in the Tyranids Discord server. If you're probably over there, I bet you'll recognize him. But yeah, we had a great game. But I died. Played 2 other games against Eldar for some reason. Craftworld Eldar. One against Ynnari, one against Eldar. Won both of those. But unfortunately, couldn't hack it in the mirror match, I guess. So it did fine. But it wasn't too exciting to talk about. Yeah. Let's get to 100k. Oh, 69k is the real goal. 100% for sure. Death or Glory with the super chat. Bribe to mention the Iron Hands list that won a small, totally not RTT level GT event. Yeah, I know. We did have Mikey from Hailstorm Wargaming won an event. Steel City GT, which was 24 players. So yeah, I mean, 5 rounds. It played all 5 rounds. Not the biggest thing ever, but definitely congratulations to Mikey for taking down a 5-round event with Iron Hands. That's pretty sweet. And also we saw some Blood Angels in there as well, so that's exciting. We'll definitely talk about that list for sure. And I don't know. Let me know chat if you want me to get Mikey on. We can talk about some Iron Hands or something.
Bribe to mention the Iron Hands list is super small, totally not an RTT level GT event. Perfect timing. YouTube super chats. You nailed it. Got it right in time. Salamanders got rocked by stupid Spore mines over the weekend. Yeah. Definitely elite armies tend to have trouble with them. They're kind of they don't tend to do a lot of damage to your army, but they're oftentimes like attacks on having the requisite random attacks to deal with them, right? Because you need like idiot strength 3 like dummies to sit in the back and just shoot off all the Spore mines every turn. If you don't, you're going to take damage from them. So I could see like Space Marines, Adeptus Custodes, all those factions having real trouble with them. You can also set it up so that the Spore mines actually do deal damage. I think that's actually less useful than putting them in annoying positions and making like mucking up your opponent's positioning. But you can set them up behind something and then run them onto an objective or something, do a little bit of damage. But kind of unlikely that they do like massive damage. But they'll do, they average a little over 1 mortal wound apiece, so it adds up. Yeah. All right, chat. Now let's get to 100k subs. I'd love to get to 100k subs. Manza, let's do it. Let's frickin' do it. All right. 100% attacks on chip shots, which you don't have much to spare. Yeah, the big downside for Space Marines for sure. The fact that your troops options, the dummies with bolters that you need to clear off the chaff infantry, the chaff sort of throwaway units, cost 100 points. It's a lot of points, as it turns out. We just talked about yesterday, talking about those Battle Force boxes. The Imperial Fizz Battle Force includes a bunch of heavy intercessors, and those are 150 points or 140 points for a unit of those guys. Even more of a tax on your Space Marine infantry. Real unfortunate. But we do have some Space Marines to talk about today, chat. So we should dive into them. So the big ones this weekend, the Coventry GT, which is a little bit of an interesting format. It had a 3-round GT attached to a 2-round GT. So we have a 3-dayer and a 2-dayer. So an 8-round tournament and a 5-round tournament. And it seems like a weird format, but this is kind of it's almost a War Machine holdover, because that's a very similar to format to what War Machine used to use. They would have a sort of they call it a Masters event, but like a top 16 event on the day 3 of an event, and then you would have multiple qualifiers to get there. And I think the interesting thing about this style of GT is that you can either, play for the big win of the 8-round GT Friday all the way through, but if you lose Friday, which I know a bunch of the people in the top on the 2-day GT did, you can hop into the 2-day and you can keep playing for prizes. And I think that that's pretty cool, because one of the things I don't love about 40k, these huge GTs, is that there ends up being so much pressure on individual games, because you have to go undefeated in order to sort of be eligible for any qualifications at all. And outside of running multiple events, it's there's no way to stop that. And I think, to some extent, for the level of competition, I think it's great. But if you're just a schmuck going in there and you drop game 1 to something random, it's real feel bads if you're signed up for 7 more games. So having an additional event to jump into, I think, is really cool. So I actually really like that format. But obviously the big one is the 8-round 3-day GT for sure. Would beam weapons change how I might deploy spore mines? No, not really. I don't think so. For the most part, you're trying to muck up your opponent's movement phase, and you assume that they're going to die anyway. So the fact that they eat, 5 or 6 shots from your opponent or 1 shooting activation from something isn't really that exciting, and it largely saves you, might save you a Termagant hit or something like that, which isn't huge value, but the fact that you can put them in front of your army and use their engagement range to block off landing zones for models coming in, that's the real value for the most part, generally speaking. And if my opponent has to shoot at something bad to get value out of the beam weapon hitting the spore mine, you're already getting it. Getting value anyway. Like if my opponent's shooting, an ion weapon from a Votan model at my Termagants to cross over the spore mines, generally speaking, I've been playing them in the Termagant list. Termagants are in front on the center objective. Spore mines are 2-3 inches in front of them to prevent easy charges onto the Termagants. If my opponent elects to take that shot into a Termagant rather than into a warrior or something like that, I'm already printing value, so I don't feel so bad about that. Anyway, let's run through some Coventry GT lists here. We have 8-0 Mike Porter playing Blaze of Light, Sadith, Harlequins. How many Star Weavers are we going to get today, chat? Looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in a battalion detachment. 2 more in a patrol detachment. Alongside, we do have 2 Sky Weavers. A Death Jester, Lord of Crystal Bones Death Jester. But for the most part, it is going to be those 8 Star Weavers. So that's, I think, generally the list that we've kind of settled on. Less so with the Void Weavers, less so with the support characters. Just putting every Harlequin in there. And I think it goes to show you that the change to the way the Light Sadith works, where if the unit is embarked in a transport, they can no longer fire their guns after the transport advances, doesn't really affect the efficiency of the list. 99% of the time, that unit's going to run to an objective, you're going to kill it, and then they're going to fire once they're on the table. It sort of prevents the Alpha Strike a little bit, but because you could only usually get a couple of Star Weavers even advancing, because the range of the fusion weapons is so short, into range of a single enemy, the number of times that you actually made use in a large quantity of that ability to advance and fire very low, and I don't think it really changed. I think you need to hit the light sadist stratagem if you actually want to make that secondary a little bit worse. Mario Barkeeper brought some old One Eye out. Oh, I was going to tag Barkeeper. He's in the Discord server. I was going to give him a shout out. He's an X and 1 with a Jormungandr list. We're definitely looking at that one, chat, for sure. Jake Wilstrip with 1,000 Suns. No Flamers, I believe. Yeah, this is the classic 1,000 Suns army without any demon allies. Ahriman, Exalted Sorcerer, Infernal Master, 1, 2, 3 units of Rubik Marines, 3 units of Scarab Occult Terminators, 1 Chaos Spawn. That's it. Done. Print it, ship it, boom. Yeah, this is an on-release style of 1,000 Suns list, where this is at the beginning of the 9th edition Codex drop, when it turns out that Grey Knights were way more broken than 1,000 Suns for whatever reason, because of virtual purification. This is the list that we saw people play, and it's really cool to see it come back out in a big way. So yeah, 30 Scarab Occult Terminators coming back to a metagame near you. And interestingly, I think that, I mean, if we're looking at this metagame, right, where Tzeentch Flamers are the #1 damage dealer, and you're building to not only survive Tzeentch Flamers, but also kill Tzeentch Flamers. And interestingly, Tzeentch Flamers, you know, the style of attacks that Tzeentch Flamers and Tzeentch lists put out are pretty good against each other, where you want this high volume, low damage attack where the 3+ demonic save doesn't impact you, and you want mortal wounds. Mortal wounds, obviously, Scarab Occult Terminators do not love, but at least you're playing 1,000 Suns, you have a pretty good chance to deny a lot of stuff. So if they're trying to focus on psychic powers, you can kind of punish that. Plus, if they're taking psychic powers, you can take Wrath of Magnus, and then you're like off to the races. But if everyone's focusing on these high volume 1 damage attacks that Flamers are putting out and that people are using to shoot at Flamers, Scarab Occult Terminators love that stuff, dude. They're, you know, if they're towing cover, they're a -1+ save against a 1 damage hit with Armor of Contempt, right? Go to a 1 with Armor of Contempt, a 0 with All Is Dust, a -1 with light cover, and that unit will not die if you're not AP. So makes total sense. Plus, they kill Tzeentch Flamers just fine. Not only with the mortal wounds, but also just with the massive numbers of Inferno Combi Bolter shots. It's a ton of termies for sure. Flamers Terabad into 1,000 Suns. Yeah, it's not good for them, right? Because you're just on your normal save. You ignore all of their AP. So if you're in cover, you're on a 2. And it's not like they have enough volume that they eventually get there, but they'll get there against Rubik Marines, but they won't get there against Scarab Occult. That is lucky for you. We have Innes Wilson from Goonhammer at 7-1 with Genestealer cults, and I think this is Genestealer cults have had this bad rap recently of being just sort of unplayable, and I think that's very much a holdover of early in the edition when Genestealer cults, especially when their Codex came out, they were totally overshadowed by Adeptus Custodes at the beginning of 2022. And people kind of wrote them off, but certainly, I mean, we've watched Eric Luthouris do incredible work with his Genestealer cult armies. We've seen some other players go get these big wins, and it's always with this one custom cult creed. Industrial Affinity. What's up, girl? Kitty's here. She's going to come visit. Okay. Kitty, you want to narrate? Can you narrate the strength of Innes Wilson's Genestealer cults list? Can you please tell us the stacked cult benefits of Industrial Affinity, War Convoy, Accustomed to Toil, and Cold-Eyed Killers, please? All right, well. So in Industrial Affinity, just off the top of my head, ignores hit penalties with industrial weapons, so specifically seismic cannons, which we see in great numbers here in these big Neophyte hybrid bricks. War Convoy gives all of your vehicles and bikers a 6+ damage ignore, which stacks obviously with the damage reduction that all of the vehicles have, which is amazing. Accustomed to Toil gives you Stalwart, so it can only be wounded on 3s. And Cold-Eyed Killers gives you a rending effect in melee. 6s to get +1. Or go to AP1. And then, yeah, so it's mostly going to be focused on, we have the 4 bricks of Neophyte hybrids, all with the proficient planning bonuses. All of the characters, we have a 10 Pure Strain unit with the pregame move with They Came From Below. And then the 3 units of Adelan Jackals, and we have an Acolyte Icon Ward to resurrect those guys. So those Adelan Jackals are incredible as sort of a front line to the army. They can... they're incredibly hard to kill. They're innate -1 to hit. They have that 6-up damage ignore, and then they can regenerate in large numbers thanks to Acolyte Icon Ward. So those guys are freaking sick. And then from that, you have all these neophytes with shotguns and seismic cannons in reserve, jumping out to grab people, and you can alpha strike them and pin your opponent into strange. So the unit, the list is very effective, and I think we've definitely seen a lot of players do well with it. Nice to finally see a big 7-1 here from Innis. Good. Top tier content now that Nikki's here? Yeah, for sure.
Hey man, off-topic question, but what are some good ways to nurse Morty in a list? Should he start the game in reserves?
CAK, excuse me. That's an interesting question. Should Morty start in reserve?
This is for the cat. More cats equals more super chats.
Lyle Dixon, thanks, man. How's it going? I saw you did pretty well at a GT over the weekend, right? I saw some photos on Facebook, I think, if I remember correctly. Good question about Mortarion. Starting the game in reserve is really awkward for him because a lot of what he wants to do is put pressure on your opponent in the early game. If he's off the table, you don't really have to do that. And Death Guard isn't sort of monumentally fast to create that table space that you need to deep break somebody in, or to reserve someone in. I think kind of just gotta eat it. It's terrain format dependent. There are some terrain formats that have line of sight blocking terrain that can hide Mortarion. And there are going to be some situations where you do want to start him in reserve. I think like Tau specifically, if they're running multiple hammerheads and especially long strike with his wound bonus against monsters, you really don't want to be putting Mortarion on the table. So I take it as a little matchup dependent. I think the situations where you want Mortarion to be in reserve are definitely if they can ranged alpha strike him off the table. But I would keep that in your back pocket for very specific matchups. I wouldn't sort of rely on it too hard, because a lot of what you want to do is force prevent your opponent from getting too close to you because you have Mortarion there and being able to take table space. And if you can put other units out aggressively where your opponent may want to hit them, and where you can hit back effectively, if they go for Mortarion can kind of be a sort of a distraction Carnifex, where he can eat all of their shooting in round 1, but he can deliver your Toll Contemptors, he can deliver your Plague Drones, he can deliver your Terminators a little bit, because he'll remove a lot of the focus from that. Definitely going second with him, it sucks super hard. Can confirm that is awkward, and I think that's just a downside of Mortarion right now. Yeah. I could see it with Knights, too. The awkward part with Knights is that the mortal wounds from Blessing of the Sacrosancts really, really hurts. But you also want Mortarion on the table to prevent your opponent's... Cat is in a plastic bag right now. I don't know if you can hear that on the microphone. I doubt you can. On something back there, and it's real noisy. What you want Mortarion to do is be able to force back your opponent's armigers. So a lot of times what they'll do is, because the armigers are relatively fast, like they can run up and they can grab the center of the table, and as a Death Guard player, you're not fast enough to contest them there, but Mortarion is. And so if you keep him off the table on turn 1, going second does suck, but it does, it forces your opponent to kill him, right? Which is a little bit questionable to begin with. And it makes it so that they can't freely just put their stuff in the center of the table and then like hit the button and say go. They have to be cognizant of threat range. So it's, you know, it's really awkward. The weird maps where you deploy diagonally but your board edge is the long edge, strategic reserving can be really strong. Yeah, that's specifically Data Scry Salvage, right? I think is the only one that uses that. I don't think any of the other ones. I have seen some really interesting strategies be used on that map because specifically that weird interaction. Thomas, now that I fought Votan, how do I feel about them? Yeah, so Votan Battle Report just went up on the replay channel. .com/TacticalTortoisetv, check it out. But that just went up today. I played against Votan for the first time ever. I've dodged them every time. I was not impressed, but I think with more reps, I think you know, Votan they'll work themselves out, and I think that I can learn to be scared of them, but right now I'm not so much. No plastic bags in chat. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. All right, moving on down the Coventry GT. We got Fushini here playing Tau. He has betrayed his Iron Hands in the weekend where Iron Hands go 5-0. Fushini is playing Tau. Farsight Enclaves. He's got a Cold Star Commander, a Firesight Marksman. Oh man, I was just looking at a Firesight Marksman. I think while I was going through Tau units for that, my least efficient units in 40k video last week. And I briefly looked at the Firesight Marksman, and I was like, remember when the Codex came out and everyone said this guy was the best unit in the Codex, and we played him? He's back. He's back, boys. Double Riptide Battlesuits, Crude Hounds, 2 Sunshark Bombers. Love this style. Got 1 unit of Crisis Battlesuits, 1 little unit of Crisis Battlesuits. Run Cyclics, Shield Generators, Plasma Rifles, and Crew Carnivores. A Precision Commander. It's a Crisis Battlesuit Commander. 3 cyclic ion blasters, thermoneutronic projector. Very cool loadout for that guy. Full rerolls on the high volume 2 damage shots if he's going to be overloading his gun. No burst cannons on him. Interesting. And the other Cold Star Commander, Templar of the Monkai, he is bringing burst, high output burst cannon. No DeWalt burst. Just 2 standards and a high output. Love it. So we're slowly building into the Death or Glory style list, chat. The Tom Ogden list of the Triple Riptides. It's getting there. We're converting more people, apparently. Okay, taking him to a GT on Saturday. Only 1 game in. Wow. Yeah, I think that. I mean, part of it is like seat of your pants. It's a little bit of matchup knowledge, but a lot of it is that your opponent. Mortarion asks a question of your opponent almost more than he does himself, right? Because Mortarion, generally speaking, he'll kill almost everything he touches in melee. So the only question is whether or not your opponent lets him touch you in melee. And it's up to them, right? They could just play keep away, but in that case, they cede the middle of the board to you. And that's sort of, you know, that's what Mortarion does. They usually have to play super cagey until they kill Mortarion, and if they can do that, you can usually either toilet bowl the game, or if they fail to kill him, they just immediately lose, or they can he can cede enough, or he can cede enough board presence that like the Death Shroud Terminators get to the middle, and then you start racking up primary objective points. Anyway, but good luck in your GT, CAK. I'm rooting for you, buddy. Death Guard are in a kind of an awkward spot right now. They're a little bit left behind, and if you can put some W's on there for Mortarion, more power to you, dude. Dan Ahern over here with Tyranids. I really like this list, chat. It's really straightforward. 3 bricks of Raveners, mostly Rending Claws and Death Spitters, 2 Biovores, 2 Harpies, Tyrannocyte, 2 bricks of Pyrovores. We are in an Outrider detachment. 2 Parasites of Mortrax. So we're paying 3 CP for the detachment already. We're taking Reaper of Obliterax. Is there no direct guidance in there?
like an oversight. But it's the two Pyrovore bricks inside the Tyrannocyte. So, I mean, like I was just saying before, right? Everyone's taking these high volume, low AP, light shooting to deal with low armor save enemies like Chaos Demons. This the Pyrovore brick, the Drop Vores, it has a name, right? There's a name people talk about it. People use for it is a very good example of that. It has mass Spore Mine placement, and I think we're seeing Harpies slowly come back into lists. I don't know about double Harpies. I actually think I like single Harpy. It has a little bit of a synergy with the Biovores because both of them are going to generate Spore Mines, and I think a lot of situations, if you're playing a really cagey game with Kraken, you want the Harpy to sit in the back, take a pot shot if it can, but it can declare hover mode, move 10 inches forward, to place Spore Mines, move 10 inches backwards. Then the Spore Mines can move up, and you can sort of link them with the Spore Mines that Biovores place, and you just start generating a ton of value from a very safe position while using your Raveners and your Drop Pod to threaten everything in the midboard of the table. So you're not sort of aggressively taking board space, but what you're doing is basically zoning out the center and telling your opponent that, like, hey, I have a Parasite of Mortrex's Alien Cunning. As long as I don't lose my whole army, I'm gonna score a 12-pointer on bottom round 5. There's almost no way to stop a Kraken Parasite of Mortrex from getting there because it moves 24 inches and automatically takes an objective, almost effectively. So you know, you're gonna hide everything. You're gonna use the Raveners and your shooting and your Hive Tyrant to prevent your opponent from taking the center. You can each score 8 a turn. You're going to tick up slowly on secondaries, and then you're going to run in. You're going to grab the center on the final round, and you're going to... and as long as they don't have guns to deal with the Harpies, there's nothing really they can do about it. Plus, the Harpies can also, like, you know, between the Harpies and the Tyrannocyte on your... because we also have Synaptic Enhancement on that Tyrannocyte, so it does get Synaptic Imperatives. It broadcasts them. You can tick to the Zoanthrope Imperative. Oh, just kidding. You can't. No Zoanthrope. Ignore me. I was gonna say you can tick to the Zoanthrope Imperative and you can drop everything, and then you can the Tyrannocyte and the Harpies together can sort of eat the focus for the Raveners, and you can use the Raveners to push way far up the table. A little bit tougher if you don't have any invulnerable saves that turn. The squishiness of your army really comes to play. It becomes very apparent very quickly. But yeah, I don't know. This list seems sweet. I would love to play a list. I don't know about the double Harpies yet. I would love to play a list with single Harpy that looks just like this. And I think it would be absolutely awesome. So yeah, this list is really cool. 7-1. At Coventry GT, congratulations to Dan Ahern. And I like that we are sort of settling into Hive Fleet Kraken being the best one, but it does feel like Tyranids have 3 or 4 very distinct builds that they can push for. I think that Monster Mash, we're going to talk about a Monster Mash list later that Barkeeper was playing, is strong. I think the Kraken Ravener list is strong, and there's even a couple different varieties of those. We see double Harpy, we see single Harpy, we see no Harpies. And I think that, speaking from personal experience, I think that the Termagant's list is actually very legit. And so I think Tyranids have a lot of cool and interesting things to do. All right, let's move on. So that's all the Axon ones at Coventry GT. We've got a bunch of other smaller GTs to talk about. These ones were all between 25 and 35 players for the most part. Bembel Clash. We also had Harlequins at the X and O spot. I just open, nailed it. This is another light Sadith. Let's take guesses, chat. But everybody put in your guesses of for how many Starweavers we get at this one. Got a lot of player troops happening. 2 units of Skyweavers, 2 units of Voidweavers. The answer is only 6 Starweavers. Wow, amazing. There's a couple of the Voidweaver coming back. Singleton Voidweavers. So pretty good for scoring secondary objectives and backline screening, because they still do a lot of damage. They're very difficult to shoot at, especially in light Sadith. And they can just, sort of be pretty useful support units. The Skyweavers for the same reason. Then we have the brick of Starweavers. And Peter's grabbing early access over there. Thanks for supporting the channel, buddy. Appreciate you. We have a Laughing God's Eye Shadows here to give everybody the
Damage ignores against mortal wounds. A Troop Master with Wit in the future. Queen of Shards. Stagger X Rose. Everything makes sense. Pretty normal Harlequin stuff. At some point, we're going to probably just stop talking about Harlequins list because they're all the same. List from Larry Oliver feels wrong. What feels wrong? Just like that's how it works. We talked about this. Barkeeper playing Tyranids. High Fleet Jormungandr running Territorial Instincts. So Jormungandr gives everybody dense cover outside 18. So -1 to hit. You can kind of leave your Venom Throps at home, although they're still pretty useful. But it looks like we home for real. And we're running single Hive Tyrant. So I think we're really pushing for a gun line style here. So it's a foot Hive Tyrant. It's not a winged Hive Tyrant. Alongside a Neurothrope in the troop slot, we have Gargoyles, Termagants, Tyranid Warriors. Old One Eye in there. There he is. What a guy. What's up, Old One Eye? 3 Rupture Tyrannifexes. People are loving the Rupture Tyrannifexes right now, chat. I'm so dubious of the Rupture Cannon Tyrannifexes because it doesn't feel to me like they ever shoot anything, but I don't know. Maybe if you have 3 of them, that's the critical mass. I'm going to have to play some Rupture Cannon Tyrannifexes, chat, because people keep putting them in their lists. And I don't entirely understand why, but, you know, it is what it is. Old One Eye acting as kind of a character protectable counterpunch to all of this beef. So we do have a Maleceptor. Now, an interesting thing about the Maleceptor right now is that we're talking, we're fighting against a lot of this high volume strength 5 shooting. We're talking about Tzeentch Flamers again. That's what Tzeentch Flamers have. That's what Thousand Suns have. That's what, a ton of factions are bringing. Even other Tyranid lists have a lot of that if they're running Mass Despoters. And the Maleceptor, if it gets its aura off, obviously, reduces the strength of enemy ranged attacks with 6 by 1, so it reduces them to 4. And if you're then presenting a toughness 8 front line between the 2 Tyrannifexes here and the Maleceptor itself, you cause all that stuff to wound on 6s. You basically give Flamers and Scarabocul Terminators and all these big strength 5 bricks. You basically give them -1 to within 6 against the Tyrannifexes. And if you're pushing the Tyrannifexes forward, and those guys are going to be the front of your army, you can kind of keep the Carnifexes a little bit back. They do have Venom Cannons and Spore Cysts, so they're very difficult to kill. If they're hiding back, they're -1 to be hit, thanks to the Jormungandr ability. They are +1 save, because they're counted as being in light cover, so they're a 1+ save, and they're -1 damage. They're super duper. That's even if they haven't going through them. They do have access to it. Not impressed with the Rupture Cannon Tyrannifexes, but have them phase 3. Yeah, I've only played against singletons so far, chat, and I can count the number of useful shots I think that they've gotten against me. But obviously, that's only 1, and 1 is much easier to dodge than 3. But it kind of the interesting part about playing them in Jormungandr. What's up, girl? You coming up? The interesting thing about playing them in Jormungandr is that you don't get access to the rerolls that you would normally get from High Fleet Leviathan, and so they feel a little bit. Well, they feel a lot less. They feel a lot less reliable than they would in Leviathan. Kronos is like the shooting High Fleet because they buff the range of their ranged weapons. I think Leviathan is better if you're running single shotguns or low volume guns because they get that floating reroll, hit or wound. But obviously, the benefit of Jormungandr is you make them a little tougher, so they're harder to shoot back at, and you get that objective secured on them. So they can just tow on objectives. The count as 5 models are very difficult. Actually, I love Territorial Instincts lists specifically for that, and also for this Hive Tyrant. The Hive Tyrant just sitting on a sort of backline or midline objective. Being unshootable thanks to the Tyrant Guard, hiding behind the Maleceptor or something. And then counting as 5 models sitting on that objective is very difficult to do. So, yeah, it's a toss-up if you want to play gun lines. Jormungandr's interesting because of I guess you can also, deep strike this stuff, right? For a CP, you can put it in reserve. I get it. It's maybe okay, I guess. I don't know if that comes into play so much, but it's certainly an option that they have. But then we have Old One-Eye as well. So Old One-Eye, he's only counts as one model obsec because he's less than 10 wounds, but he still is an unshootable objective secured model who can, assuming that he's being character protected by some termagants or something. So I think that style of list gives you a lot of options to what's the word? Apply player skill in order to, just playing the OPSEC game is really strong. But obviously, I think the chances that you get a bad matchup where you can't shoot anything, or your opponent is able to Tyrannifex is it on get tougher real quickly. Last one in here, we do have a Blood Angels list. Michael Geringer. Got Dante, a Death Company captain. So using the Death Company rules to get around the one captain per detachment restriction, because normally Dante would take that. This guy is very much a smash captain. He has a Mastercrafted Thunderhammer, so a 4 damage Thunderhammer, plus Imperium Sword, so +1 strength and attacks on the charge. And then the Death Company rule, I believe, also gives you another +1 attack on the charge, right? So if you're attacking in Assault Doctrine, then your +1 attack for Shock Assault, +1 attack for Imperium Sword, +1 attack for your Death Company, +1 attack for Assault Doctrine. So you swing 8 times with a 4 damage Thunderhammer. That seems pretty good, chat. Plus, he's got a Combi Melta in there for a little cheeky Melta shot. Just gonna double check that is correct for Black Rage. Yes. Each time made a charge move or performed a heroic intervention, get +1 to the attacks characteristic and a 6+. Can't perform any actions. That's a lot of damage. Very nice. We have a Sanguinary Priest. Not a... He has a Hero of the Chapter listed here, but he doesn't have a Warlord trait. Oh no, Rites of War, excuse me. Back here. So he has the OPSEC aura. He's not a selfless healer, though. And Teeth of Terra. That's a pretty common build we see a lot of times. 3 Assault Intercessor squads, or excuse me, 2 Assault Intercessors, 1 Incurse. A Death Company Marines for Forlorn Fury, a Redemptor Dreadnought. So we do have a little bit of shooting in this list, which adds some flexibility. 2 units of Sanguinary Guard, looks like 1 of 7, 1 6. 1 Inceptor Squad, some Land Speeders, an Eradicator Squad, and a Whirlwind for Fight Last. So this is much more shooting heavy than we typically see Blood Angels. A lot of times you just see them, just everything Sanguinary Guard all the time. But having the Redemptor Squad and the Eradicator Squad gives you a lot more flexibility, plus these back here. And the Plasma Inceptors also give you kind of an out to deal with hordes without having to apply the Sanguinary Guard, which is something that Blood Angels can have problems with. Not that they have problems actually killing large, high model count units, but they don't want to expose a 200-point unit of Sanguinary Guard to kill a bunch of random one idiots. It's a lot of lost damages, a lot of lost efficiency, and they can't quite do it with their bolt guns. But the Inceptors, because they have the plasma guns, it's 2 D3-shot blast weapons, which means they fire 6 times a piece, blast it all, against a 6-model enemy, which can be pretty brutal. So that's really cool. I like this list, chat. This list, it's a little bit different than we see from Blood Angels. Very cool. Definitely plays the normal Blood Angels game plan. It has some unique stuff. I really like that Smash Captain. That's a pretty scary Smash Captain right there. Moving on, we have the Hobart GT, Matt Morrisoli with Chaos Demons. I just skipped over the Ragnarok Major. We'll go with that one there. Matt Morrisoli, 5-0 with Chaos Demons, Bloodthirster, Changecaster, Fluxmaster, so the Foot Herald. This is the Disc Herald for Zine. Plus 3 units of Demonettes, 3 units of Flamers, so 15 Flamers, 30 Demonettes. The Blue Horror unit, as well as Nurglings for Recover the Relics. And we have a full Khorne detachment with Scarbrand himself. The great man himself is here. So the Bloodthirster is the Warlord. He does unlock... The Bloodthirster and the Demon that's unfortunately cut us for the Tzeentch Warpstorm abilities, but we do get access to the Khorne ones because we have a full Khorne detachment. And we do have the Tank Thirster build. So Indomitable Onslaught, so the 8 wound phase cap, Blood Drinker Talisman for healing wounds, and then Brazen Hide for 5-up damage ignore on all those wounds. So he is pretty difficult to kill, and sometimes grab an extra phase cap out of that one. Then we also have Scarbrand. So I guess the interesting question is whether or not we deep strike the Bloodthirster, which I like doing because it's very difficult to kill that guy if you can't shoot him turn 1. But obviously that puts Scarbrand on the table, which is tough. But if you're able to use enough, we do have demonic icons here, so we can extend out our aura of minus leadership and reinforce that with Warp Storm points. Then you can potentially use demonic manifestation to bring in Scarbrand normally, usually between 6 and 7 inches. Well, and then he can charge and try to get stuck in. Scarbrand at a 5-0 is really good on Matt Morrisoli, man, because Scarbrand seems real tough to do well with in a 5-round GT. I think a lot of times you run into opposing melee factions. Scarbrand just ends up being a real detriment to your own army. But if you're high enough model count that you don't really care about your opponent overkilling your Demonite units, because it's only 10 in a unit, it's whatever. I guess it's probably fine. That's awesome, dude. Joel Smith, yeah, you can throw questions in there. Basically, if there's a break in the conversation, I'll go through questions. But obviously, dropping a super chat. That's the number one way to get there. Scarbrand's so slow, 100%. Yeah, I definitely, I don't know. I wish his no fallback aura was. Didn't require a roll off. Like you have to make a debuffed leadership check to be able to fall back. I wish it just locked you in place. And I wish he was faster. I wish he could jump over. If he could, the model's relatively small. I was looking at it yesterday or on Saturday, excuse me. There was a player at the RTT I was at who was playing Scarbrand, and he's actually compared to the regular Demon Friend or Bloodthirster. Jesus. Compared to the regular Bloodthirster, he's actually significantly smaller. So he's not that hard to hide. His base is also smaller. He's on the 100 mil round, the Redemptor Dreadnought base, not the oval base. So if you have decent terrain, he can actually just hide on turn 1. But the problem is that he's not flying, so he has to wander around the outside of the vertical terrain element. And he gets real stuck. So I think you almost have to deep strike him in. But then your opponent can screen him. He ends up getting stuck in with Trap Infantry. Instead of being able to block them in melee and become immune to shooting, he just kills them. He takes a bunch of damage in shooting. He dies in melee because he buffs your opponent's attacks. I don't know. Maybe I wish like his attack aura only affected him was only in place during his own. Hey, there you go.
Thoughts on
There's
the recent
super chat.
card leaks? Personally, other than the Rough Riders, Lord Solar, and Shadow Sword, I've been rather disappointed.
So I'll be honest. I haven't put a ton of time looking at the leaks until we see the Codex holistically, because I do think that is something that can be that can happen, right? Is like you take a look at one data sheet or something, and you're like, oh man, this doesn't look that great. This sucks. This Codex is going to be bad. And that was like a little bit. I mean, that happens a lot when the new codexes come out, but really you have to look at the whole thing holistically. So until the codex is fully spoiled, I don't actually tend to look at spoilers too hard. I did look at the Rough Rider specifically, and I have looked at the rumors that as they've been rolling in. And I think so far it looks pretty. I'm not going to say it looks like the most broken thing in the world, but I think it looks pretty decent. I like that there's sort of a transition of damage from your tanks. They don't do the double shooting, but they do get bonuses and their weapons are better. But they're going to do a similar amount of damage. The direct fire shooting is where a lot of the damage is going to be coming. And I think the interesting part about guard lists is going to be constructing your list in a way that it forces your opponent to come into your line of sight so that your direct fire shooting can get on target. And I think Death Strike missile launchers are a really cool way to make that happen.
basically broadcast their landing zone with an action, but they come in the next turn, so your opponent is forced to spread out to not take damage, and then if they spread out too far, you can redeploy the action, put the landing marker somewhere else, and the missile can spawn somewhere else the turn after, so you can use them as like a threat. It's a mind game. I think that's cool. It sounds like, I don't know so much, it sounds like that there's going to be some more mortal wound output from the artillery pieces, which I think is going to be a little bit scary. It'll probably be capped pretty significantly. I wonder if it'll be like the submunition shots from HOW Empire, where it's sort of based on your model count, so it does more damage to less valuable models, in which case I think it's probably fine. But being able to peck at your opponent a little bit with that artillery and force them to come fight you, and then you can deal damage with the direct shooting and the melee stuff, I think is going to be, I don't know, it's going to be really interesting. I think there's going to be some really sort of well-rounded Imperial Guard lists that are the profiles of the Rough Riders and the Lord Solar are a little silly. It's so much of a departure from the classic sort of Imperial Guard stat line. It's a little funny. The fact that the Rough Riders are just like base strength 4, I think, sort of sent me. I was like, it doesn't matter that they're base strength 4 because if they wanted them to be the equivalent of strength 4, they could just make their weapons have a higher strength value. It was just a little bit funny that their base profile is just a Space Marine with extra wound. Those horses, man. Those horses have been running around, and they've been grazing really well. Yeah, I don't know. But I do think in order to come to a conclusion about the Codex, you have to see the entirety of the Codex for sure. And definitely like these knee-jerk reactions, like when Adeptus Custodes came out and everyone was like, oh, it's the worst army in the game because they don't have 3+ invulnerable saves anymore. And then it turns out, like, actually, it was the best army in the game the whole time. I think that we have to avoid sort of coming to conclusions just seeing a small tidbit of rumored rules. And sort of writing it off as a whole. Yeah, strength 8 with the Melta-Lance, right? Those things are they do so much damage. I like that the Lord Solar's aura ability, or his I don't know. The Lord Solar's gonna be amazing. He's randomly also like a melee beater. He's got like 8 strength 6 2 damage attacks, right? Yeah, I don't know. Faction looks fine. Good. Exploding 3s on the Riders. That's only with their frag shots. Their frag thing, right? Oh no, the frag thing doubles hits, right? Is that what it is? Manza wants to collect an actual human army. They're pretty meh. Yeah, I'm not sure that nothing I've seen about the Imperial Guard seems particularly bad. I don't know if I would. Maybe I have to look deeper into it, but everything seems okay so far, at least from what I've seen. Oh, it is the frag tip lance explodes on 3s? Yeah. But that's sort of whatever, right? It explodes on 3s with like a strength 4 AP1 hit. The real danger comes from that Melta-Lance. When you just like hit a unit of like Chaos Terminators or something and just vaporize them. Interestingly, I think I saw when the Rough Riders got spoiled, people were going over the rumored stat line. And I remember that the rumored stat line had a 4+ weapon skill, but it turns out they have a 3+, and that actually makes them much playable. So those guys seem pretty. It would be cool if they implemented a knocked off rule like they have in Lord of the Rings. Yeah, I think so. I agree. Those rules are always fun. In unit games, they get really weird because you run into situations where, like, if you have a foot model who is significantly slower than the cavalry model, but they occupy the same unit, then like you end up slowing the unit down and your coherency becomes a nightmare, and it actually becomes like a real big debuff for you. So I think just having them as
being the same dudes. Fine. Death or Glory have 30 Death Riders? Hell yeah. The Death Riders aren't in the Codex, right? Just the regular core, the Kriegsmen. But you could just use Death Riders as the Rough Riders. It's going to be fun seeing, like, people are going to be, like, rocking out, like, old Bretonnian knights and stuff as Rough Riders. I'm imagining so many Warhammer Fantasy cavalry models, like, getting an oval base and, like, starting to appear in 40k tournaments. I think it's going to be kind of fun. All right. Well, let's talk about these lists, chat. We have another Chaos Demons list here. We talked about Matt Morasoli. Lance Glover is running Unstoppable Swarm, which is that I have to look up. That's not the pregame move. It is ignore movement characteristic modifiers. Right. I guess you can go through difficult terrain. That's interesting. I wonder if there's like a metagame reason for that. Maybe there's a lot of difficult terrain being played in the area that this GT took. But this is very similar to the list we looked at earlier. Obviously, no Pyrovores, unfortunately. Sad for everyone. We do have one Winged Hive Tyrant with an Earthrope, a second Winged Hive Tyrant, two Winged Hive. Love it. So I guess one thing that ignoring movement characteristic or ignoring movement modifiers means that you can't get like Fire Reave grenaded, but I don't think you can if you're a fly anyway. So can't be the Tau. You can't use the Tau stratagem to mess with their charges. I guess. I feel like you would just take +1 to charge though. Like, right? I don't know what I'm missing. I don't know what I'm missing here. Lance Glover. Gargoyles. Hive Tyrant. Venom Throbes. Another Winged Hive Tyrant. 2 units of Raveners. Turn to Warriors. Biovores. Double Harpies. The Harpy's coming back, man. 2 heavy Venom Cannons on those Harpies as well. No adaptive physiologies. We're just generating a ton of Spore Mines and doing shooting 4 damage guns at people. I think that it feels like to me like the heavy Venom Cannons are kind of the way to go. The Stranglethorn Cannons were strong, but we're looking at so many 3-wound infantry right now that heavy Venom Cannons, especially with the higher AP value, so important. Despite the fact that they do cost a ton of points. Against Dread tests, maybe. Are you people really worried about Chaos Knights right now? No Chaos Knights anywhere on these lists. Maybe if you have a ton of Chaos Knights in your area or something. But I'm not sure. Kids have been nuked right now, becoming Crusher with 1 list. I think absolutely the opposite. Absolutely the opposite. We were just talking about it. I think Tyranids have a ton. They have much more variety now than they did when Leviathan was strong. AOS Griffin models as Rough Riders. Black Knights as Rough Riders. Oh man, Black Knights. Now I want like a zombie Imperial Guard army. So everyone's a Skelly man with a gun, but you have Black Knights as your Rough Riders. That sounds amazing. We skipped right over the Ragnarok Major. We can talk about that. Clement Tournade. With Ynnari. So here's the question: is it the plain Ynnari or MSU Ynnari? Is very much MSU. I'm terrified of this list, chat. I think this list is absolutely fun. No wonder I went 6-0. So Farseer, Shadow Seer, we Faithful Divergence, and a bunch of Ynnari powers. The Incarn, 3 units of Rangers. The Rangers are so amazing in this list. You just put them in your opponent's the deployment zone behind a line of sight blocker. If they don't have any like fast guns to shoot them, you hit scout the enemy, you get 2 or 3 points every turn pretty consistently. If they charge you, the Incarn just shows up at the end of their fight phase, and then your turn, the Incarn kills something. Your Harlequin players kill something on the other side of the table as the next fight activation, and the Incarn just peels out. It's like so difficult to deal with. So that you're going to take Rangers in basically every list anyway. But the Rangers, not only do they count for you have to have equal as your Ynnari units to units from other Eldari subfactions in a Ynnari detachment, but they just work with the game plan well of teleporting the Incarn into terrifying positions on the table. We have 3 big units of Harlequin troopers. Now, the interesting thing about these is that everything always strikes first. And the fact that you are -1 to hit in melee, a 4+ invul and save, and if you die, the Incarn can show up and you can do things with it. Means that like the Harlequin troops play very aggressively in this kind of subfaction, and getting charged for them isn't so big of a deal because they basically get interrupts for free, and it's very difficult to one-shot a Harlequin troop. Really good. 1 unit of Howling Banshees with Crone Scream, Mirror Strikes, and Pierce. Crushing Blows, Striking Scorpion unit. Warlocks, 2 units. Warlock Sky, 1 individual, 1 big unit. The individual probably in there. Yeah, we have a Quicken on the big unit, so we can quicken the individual guy, so he can run up, do psychic actions, and spend Strands of Fate to make it happen automatically, and then the other Skyrunning unit just pulls him out of danger. Pretty classic combination. 1 Viper, 1 Wave Serpent, 14 Swooping Hawks. Scooping Hawks? Swooping Hawks. This one with the Phoenix Plume, so -1 to be hit and a 5+ damage ignore it. Interestingly, no Phoenix Lords. You can't take Phoenix Lords in Ynnari detachments, but you can take them in auxiliary detachments, and that's normally what we see in them. Not taking Behareth. We have a 5-1 from Stuart Bull. That'll be a fun surprise for us later. Battalion Detachment, Bloodthirster, Flux Master, Transweaver, so the Slanesh foot character. Units of Demonettes, 1 Bloodletters, 1 Horrors, 12 Flamers, Fiends, 1 Exalted Flamer. So we are kind of full Flamer comboing. The Flux Master for reroll buns and +1 to wound from Infernal Flames, and the +1 strength on the Exalted Flamer. Plus a Khorne detachment, so we have 10 Bloodletters and Bellicor. We do have Bellicor for the Warp Locust. So we can drop in the Bloodthirster if we want to. So this is this is definitely becoming kind of the standard operating procedure is bringing the Bloodthirster as the Warlord in a mixed detachment. But this is a real smashy Bloodthirster. So he has Devastating Blow as a Warlord trait, which is I believe plus I believe it's just an Imperium sword. +1 strength and attack on the charge, but I will double check that one. Oh, excuse me. He ignores damage ignores. Yeah, so Glory of Battle is the attack bonus. So he's not taking that. He can punch your damage ignore. So he can kill phase caps. So he can one-shot Catan and Abaddon. And he gets through damage ignore rolls, which is really helpful actually, because he has Argath, King of Blades. He ignores attack modifiers as well, so he's basically just rolling normal attacks. He's gonna roll his hit roll, he's gonna roll his wound roll at whatever the wound chart says, and then you're just gonna take the damage based on your. That's really good against enemy Chaos Space Marine players because you oftentimes, especially Emperor's Children, are a really big deal right now. You have the 10 model Terminator brick with Black Rune of Damnation, so -1 to be wounded, so it would put the Bloodthirster to wounding on 3s. And then you put Delightful Agonies on them. So they have a 5+ damage ignore. But this Bloodthirster is going to get through that really easily. It's going to be hitting on 2s, or he may not be hitting on 2s. He can't get through Illusory Supplication, unfortunately. But he's wounding on 2s. He puts them on a 4+ save, and then because Argath, King of Blades, also gives +1 damage, his sweep attacks, he's rolling 16 or 18 of these, is 3 damage apiece and ignores Delightful Agony. So every time you fail a save, an entire Terminator. So he is like a Terminator sweeper, basically. He kills like 7 or 8 if he hits them without Illusory Supplication. Illusory Supplication obviously cuts that in half, but he still does a ton of damage. Seems pretty good.
The can only be hit on like a trans hitman kind of deal, or basically anything that checks success or failure based on your hit roll or wound roll typically supersedes everything else. So transhuman, illusory supplication, like I don't know, the Slaanesh strat, all that stuff is basically unignorable effectively. So that's always going to be. So we get to take a look at Ross Penfold's list here. Ooh, is a towel list. More concept. Interestingly. Well, that's cool. We have a Precision Commander, the DeWalt 02 Advanced Burst Cannon, regular high output. Onager Gauntlet, so he's a punchy boy. The Fist of the Cold Star over here. With a... just regular Ethereal. He is Exemplar of the Kalyan, but he's not Humble Staved. Awkward. A little interesting. 3 strike teams. They get that Borkon range bump. They actually basically shoot the whole table with the standard pulse rifles. We have a unit of battle suits, 2 units of crude hounds, 1 unit of pathfinders, 3 Riptide battle suits, yeah boy, and 2 Sunshark bombers. So yeah, basically everyone's moving towards these triple Riptide lists. And the Riptide battlesuits, outside of Storm Surgers, which you probably don't necessarily want to be playing anymore, Riptide battlesuits are the single best place for the Borkon stratagem, which picks a weapon that the model has, and that weapon ignores invulnerable saves for that shot. So not all of their attacks, but a single weapon. So you want the biggest weapons, basically, that you can fit. And those generally tend to be on Riptide battlesuits. The Storm Surge, obviously, the big pulse drivers, is the best one that you can find outside of, within the Codex, outside of Hammerheads, but Hammerheads already ignore invulnerable saves. Seen that list live? It was depressing how everything melted versus Tau. Yeah. And so now you need a plan to kill a Bloodthirster. They're tough, man. That Indomitable Onslaught is super tough to get through, especially if your opponent is using if your opponent is rolling really well for Warstorm, they can constantly be healing that guy for D3 every morale phase. You can pretty easily get it to where you need another round to kill. Or another phase to kill him. And if you don't deal damage in every phase, it gets really awkward. Especially since he has like a 4+ deny in the bank. So you can't necessarily... if you don't have too many psychic powers, you can't necessarily get him in the psychic phase. And oftentimes he's jumping into you on turn 2 because he's deep striking off of Be'lakor. So you don't get a round of shooting before he gets in. He just gets into you and you eat a round of attacks. You're like, dang, this sucks. And then you can try to kill him, a full round to kill him. But if you don't have the multi-damage, if you can't deal 20 damage, you split into 3 different phases over 1 turn. You basically eat 2 rounds of attacking from him and he gets murdered. Oh, that list was on Wargames live chat? The Borkon list? That's sick. Yeah, I'm gonna have to give some Riptides a try. I like Riptides. They're pretty. Imperial Knights seem way stronger than their counterpart. Agree. Yeah. So I made what was apparently the controversial remark that I thought that Chaos Knights were now that basically everything's been refreshed to 9th edition, we're now one of the worst armies in the game, and everyone went up in arms, and we see a lot of Imperial Knights, which I put, I think, above average in my faction breakdown, which I did 2 weeks ago. Go check that video out. There's a lot of Imperial Knights. There's no Chaos Knights anywhere. The Chaos Knights and Grey Knights doing pretty bad. Where'd those guys go? They're not in this top. I said Chaos Demons were number 3 in the game. Or was number 2 in the game next to Harlequins. The Tyranids were 1 after that. Look at that. Look at all those Chaos Demons. Right at the top here. Amazing. Look at all these Harlequins right at the top. I was like, oh, I knew what I was talking about.
So yeah, I 100% agree. Imperial Knights, I'm not going to say incredibly strong, but very strong. The healing is every turn is very hard. Yeah, you really need a way to carry over Warp Storm points, and then you can go along. But I've played against people. I've played enough Demon Mirror matches that every once in a while you get somebody who just rolls 5 or 6 every turn. They're like, oh, I guess I'll heal again. You're like, can you just stop? But it's totally random, and that's how, that's the mechanic. Not a lot of people are building for Warp Storm right now. Honestly, I think the Tzeentch Warp Storm Warp Storm abilities are really strong. A lot of people are building for the Khorne ones, but I think that's mostly because they're easier to unlock. They're kind of useful. Like, no fallback is pretty strong, and the +1 attack is situationally good. But if they're not required for your list, there's no reason to try to push for them. So we have the other half of the Coventry event, the Coventry GT, so the 2-day version. So everyone who either didn't have all 3 days to play or who got knocked out early in the 3-day got to move over and play the 2. Number 1 was Dennis here. Abereznik. I don't know. What do you think, chat? Is this Dennis's? They call him Derek. His name is Dennis. Is this Dennis's real name, or is this because he's playing? Is this a thematically appropriate name? We have. It is Relentlessly Expansionist Eternal Conquerors. We have the Silent King. Not so far, so no real changes from the classic list. We do have a brick of Necron Warriors, so 18 Necron Warriors in this. Pretty good option for and still bringing a Catacomb Command Barge, even though it lost Corky. Interesting. So not really getting rerolls in this guy, unfortunately. But still bringing this big brick of Necron Warriors, which is good if we have a Veil of Darkness. You on the Chronomancer. We need to Scorpic Destroyers, a Transcendent Catan. Doomsday Arc. Doomsday Arc, really interesting. But that is core keyword, so you can just plank it, stick it next to the Silent King, and we'll still get rerolled. Probably sort of backs up the Silent King's shooting, because the Silent King's not quite as what's the word? Quite as consistent as he was, but if he stapled to a Doomsday Arc, he's probably fine. 5 Scorpic Destroyers. Lots of Scarab Swarms, like 14 Scarab Swarms, 2 of 3 and 1 of 8. 3 Canoptic Wraiths and 3 your chaff stuff. This is a very interesting build out of the normal Necron stuff that we typically see. The Necron Warrior Brick is really interesting. I would wonder if people are bringing like enough beef to kill it, and I kind of imagine that they are, but maybe you play it really conservatively. Kind of because you have the Scarab Swarms pushing forward, and you have the Scorpic Destroyers are waiting in the wings, but you have the Wraiths and the Tomb Blades to grab objectives early. You don't really need to push the Necron Warriors too far. And you can maybe make it so that the Silent King and the Catacomb Command Barge kill enough stuff that the Necron Warriors don't get one shot. And then you can bail them out and kill something and then be obnoxious in the middle of the table. Because they do count as double models for objective secured, so they count as 2 apiece. So it's basically impossible to steal an objective from a Necron Warrior Brick unless you kill it. Which is tough. Turns out, this just in, 20 Necron Warriors, difficult to one-shot. Although whether or not that's worth the points investment for that question. We do have an Emperor's Children list here. So yeah, 10 Cast Terminators, 5 Possessed, 1 Venom Crawler, 1 of Noise Marines, a Demon Prince, Master of Possession, Dark Apostle. I think this is sort of the classic Emperor's Children list. I did play against this the other day, but I didn't stream it, unfortunately. So I had a very good game with dudes from the channel, from the Discord server. And that list is legit. Can confirm. Very strong. We got David Gaylord, our very untrue, in the chat right now, playing some Chaos Demons. This was Bloodthirster with King of Blades and Brazenhide. But no healing, but we do have the 5-up damage ignore plus the Indomitable Onslaught to make him very difficult to kill. a Changecaster and Transweaver, 2 Bloodletters, 2 Demonettes, 15 Flamers, a Khorne Patrol with Bellicor plus Blood. Almost exactly what we talked about earlier. A little bit different build on the Bloodthirster, though, playing him a little bit tankier than with the Devastating Blow. So he doesn't quite get through that damage ignore quite as easily, but for the most part, I think that the massaging of the Bloodthirster builds are not super important. Once you get the Indomitable Onslaught Bloodthirster in there, you can kind of just add whatever you want on top of him. It's all gravy for the most part. We do have Simon Edwards with a Necrons. Or, excuse me, Thousand Suns. And this is Magnus the Red, chat. We have a Magnus the Red. Oh my god. I just spent all day yesterday shit-talking Magnus the Red, and he just X and O to GT. Egg on my face, chat. God damn. Simon Edwards, what an absolute legend. The Ahriman Exalted Sorcerer, Infernal Master. You have an Egligan's Orrery making its appearance. It's, Relics is so difficult to use. It requires you to have line of sight to an enemy unit in the command phase, and then you pick that and you get to ignore hit modifiers or attack modifiers on that specific unit. But it's very difficult to use because if your opponent just blocks line of sight to the one Exalted Sorcerer, you get it. But the threat is so impactful that it's worth spending the CP on. At least speaking as a Tyranid player who's a lot of attack modifiers, having the threat of that Egligan's Orrery in there at any one point, you can just point it at a warrior unit. The warrior unit just vaporizes. That's always a little bit scary. 5 units of Rubric Marines, Icons, like all bolt guns, no warp flamers, besides the pistols. A big brick of Scarab called Terminators, 2 units of Chaos Spawn, big units of Chaos Spawn. So it's pretty good for trading for the center objective. It's so many wounds, 16 wounds. You can give a 4+ damage ignore, and with Glamour and Weaver, you can be -1 to hit, 4+ invulnerable savings, and double move them to get charges onto stuff in the center. Which means for only 100 points, you can basically be blanking out primary until your Scarab called Terminators get into place, which is pretty important because you are spending 420 points. Hey, the meme number. And Magnus the Red here sitting in the back and 420 blazing it. That's sick. That's sick, chat. Magnus the Red. Hell yeah. That's super cool. Cliff Thomas in chat. What's up, dude? Just updated the stat check meta dashboard to include last weekend's result. Cheers, man. I appreciate you. I reference your stuff quite a bit. So I really appreciate all of the work that you put into doing all of the stat stuff. It is so useful. Yeah, it's been a long time since I've seen a Magnus, chat. I played against one Magnus at a tournament like months ago, and he did nothing and died. And I was like, wow, Magnus the Red. You do give a lot of Cabal points, but I don't know if I'm that impressed by you. Thousand Suns 2 cranked, Nurgle Matt. Get good, dude. You wish you did as many mortal wounds as frickin' Thousand Suns. Cliff, I'll always shout out good resources for the community. I think it's really, as long as there's so much discussion about power levels and what should get nerfed and all of these data slate changes, I think it's really important that people keep in mind that we do have stat tracking. There are people in the community who are awesome enough to do all that work to put it together, and I think it's useful for when we're diving in, that we can have some data to back us up. So yeah, I mean, I appreciate you, dude. I know there was a request to talk about this Astra Militarum list. This is pure Astra Militarum. Looks like we are playing Cadia. It is a Brigade detachment, the full Brigade. I feel like Brigade detachments, as an aside, are just there for Astra Militarum players, right? Like, that's the case, right? 100%. Nobody else plays Brigade detachments besides Astra Militarum. I played a Brigade in 8th edition with Tyranids, but it was not great. But you could do it in the Astra Militarum just fine. Company Commander. A Company Commander. 3 Tank Commanders and Knight Commander Pask. Oh man, we're off to a start here. 1 with Gatekeeper, so the 3 damage battle cannon. 2 Demolish the Siege Cannons on the Tank Commanders, 1 on Knight Commander Pask. We have Weapon Expert on the Tank and I don't... That's a tank ace ability? No, because he has a Warlord. No, he has a Relic. That must be a tank ace ability. When I don't know that, I have to look it up. +1 AP. Yeah, so Gatekeeper is only AP2, right? That makes total sense. It's interesting that usually those Warlord traits specify that they don't affect relics, but it's interesting that this one doesn't. Yeah, so it's AP Strength 8, AP2, 3 flat damage on Gatekeeper, so it goes to AP3, which means start putting 4 or 5 up, which is a pretty big breakpoint. But having that 3 damage blast weapon again against those big Terminator bricks is such a big deal. You're getting 2d6 min 3 each shots, so between 6 and 12 basically. All of which probably put you on a 3+ or a 4+ save if you're a Terminator, and each one of those converted attacks just kills a guy. Pretty solid. What do I think about Necrons without the Silent King? I don't love them, honestly. I think it's much more viable now that the Silent King's a little bit less powerful, but he's not only a force multiplier for your early game or your mid game units, but he's also late game's really hard for you. And Necrons just don't have any of those like beaters in the late game they can use. Plus, if you have bad secondaries on a particular mission or a matchup, you can always fall back on Code of Combat. And without Silent King, you just don't have that option. So I don't super love Necron lists without Silent King. You can run like triple Scorpax plus Ophidians or something to try to like ape the Silent King for melee damage. But the fact that not only are you not getting the Silent King's melee damage himself, but he also then is not giving you rerolls to the Scorpax. So the Scorpax actually end up like punching way lower than you thought they would, and it kind of falls apart. So I don't know. I think Silent King is great. All right, moving on back to this list. All the infantry squads. We got 10. 1, 2, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 infantry squads. 3 command squads. The Astropath, 2 platoon commanders, plasma guns, special weapons, 3 scout sentinels to fill out fast attack, 3 mortar. This list is great. that is a spicy list, chat. That is a spicy meatball right there. So 4 tank commander Leman Russ sitting in the back line, protected by 100 infantry, 100 infantry and infantry squads, plus 12 in. 8 in special weapons teams and 12 in command. Another 20 plus all the heavy weapons. Like 100. It's somewhere around 150 models standing in front of those guys. Seems good. That is sweet. Do I think GW have backed themselves into a corner with Votann? Any future codexes that are deemed too good will get day 0 erratas, making printed books pointless. Let me tell you, hot take here, chat. Printed books already pointless. The day 0 erratas, it's not a new thing. And erratas for balance sake are relatively new, but fixes for misprints have been constant over the course, not only of 9th edition, but also the entirety of codexes. Who remembers the 8th edition Space Wolves Codex that just came out without a page? It was missing a whole page. You couldn't take Warlord traits, I think. You just couldn't take Warlord traits in that book as printed. GW's printed medium, already garbage. Use Wahapedia. I do think that Day 0 erratas is problematic from sort of a consumer advocacy standpoint, because they changed that codex after their pre-orders had been for the box had been fulfilled, right? So you're purchasing a game piece that then changes significantly before you get a chance to play it, and I think that is that's problematic. I think that is an issue. I'm worried that sort of it gives ammunition to like the most vocal members of the community, where like people see a new codex come out, they're like, this is broken, nerf it immediately. And Games Workshop caves to that pressure, and I think it just incentivizes those people to be whinier. I think that is problematic. I'm not going to say I don't think Votann were broken as printed. I do think that the correction was too far. I think it was an overcorrection, and I'm worried about the precedent that it sets. So, like, I mean, I'm glad it happened, I guess, but I'm worried about how it could be implemented. That's what I have to say about that. All right, moving on. We got a couple more events to talk about, chat, before we wrap things up. Steel City GT. We talked about this one. This is Mikey from Hellstorm Wargaming. Iron Hands took it down, playing Master Artisan's Whirlwind of Rage, so he gets 1 hit reroll per activation, per combat activation, plus exploding 6s on the charge. Whirlwind of Rage. We have a Primaris Lieutenant, so he's got Voxa Spiritum, so the extra 3 inches on auras, plus Rites of War, so he's a 9-inch objective secured aura. A Tech Marine, target protocols, so it gives you a floating hit, wound, and damage reroll for 1 thing within 6, at the start of the shooting phase. 3 Redemptor Dreadnoughts, the Relic Contemptor, with March of the Ancients, Merciless Logic, so additional attacks on hit rolls of 6. You have the Tech Marine standing next to it. So the full wombo combo. I've talked at length about this. I think this is the best Space Marine list. I think probably Blood Angels have outstripped it a little bit, but it is a close second to Blood Angels in terms of the best list in the faction. And I've talked about this list quite a bit. So the Relic Contemptor Dreadnought stands next to the Tech Marine. It has a Cyclone Missile Launcher, so it has 2 shots at D6 damage. The Tech Marine gives it +1 to hit. You spend 1 CP for Methodical Firepower. It gets +1. It gets reroll 1s to hit and +1 AP because it goes back into Devastator Doctrine. So you're firing 2 Cyclone Missile Launcher shots, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s. Your 6s get an additional shot that hits on 2s and rerolls 1s. Then you get one of those that you can reroll the wound roll, and you can reroll the damage roll of per turn. And then with 2 Twin Volkite Culverins, it shoots 16 times. Hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s. 6s explode into additional attacks again, and then those hit at AP1, 2 damage, and do mortal wounds on top. It's probably standing next to the Primaris Lieutenant, so it's also getting reroll 1s to it. So the amount of damage from this single model, it's probably the most dangerous single model in the entire game. Yeah. It probably converts a missile launcher shot with a rerolling damage roll, so it probably hits you for 4 with a missile launcher. The Volkite Culverins hit you an average of between 4 and 6 times with wound rolls of 6, so it probably plows you for like 6 mortal wounds and then puts a ton of 2 damage saves on you. Even if you're just saving them on 3s, it forces enough of them that you probably only you probably still eat 4 or 5 of those, so you're eating like 10 damage from the Volkite Culverins, and that's shooting at something that's already probably pretty resilient. If your saves aren't that great, this thing will just remove shoots. Relic Contemptor Dreadnought, super good. The problem is that 3 CP cost. You got to pay for Martial Legacy, you got to pay for Merciless Logic, you got to pay for March of the Ancients, you got to pay for Target Protocols. So that CP starts dwindling pretty quickly. This is not a list that has a ton of CP, and you have to pay every turn for the Iron Hand stratagem as well. You can also All Mercy is weakness it, I think, and so that your wound rolls explode on top, so that you can also force additional wounds. But again, more and more CP. Just costs 1 million CP to use this combo. We have 3 Redemptor Dreadnoughts, Gatling Cannons, and Macroplasma Incinerators on those. They can also sort of support the Relic Contemptor. They draw fire for it. The Relic Contemptor also becomes a character, so you can't shoot at it, so it's going to hide behind the Redemptor Dreadnoughts. And then those things do get rights. So they get objective secured from right if they're standing next to the Lieutenant. And not even next to, it's a 9-inch aura. Big. Then we have 2 Vanguard Veteran Squads. So these can wombo combo the Whirlwind of Rage plus all Marissa's weakness. So you can explode your 6s to hit when you charge. Those explode into additional wound rolls that are full rerolling thanks to Lightning Claws, although they do have one Thunderhammer in there who gets a reroll from the Master Artisans. So he has a floating reroll. And those additional wound rolls with full rerolls then get more 6s, which inflict an additional wound on top. So the amount of damage you do between the combo of those two abilities is sort of ludicrous. They do, I think they average against a standard vehicle profile, they average about 15, which is pretty surprising for a little unit of jump pack, boys. And then we have a drop pod with 2 Devastators. Mix of Grab and Multi-Meltas, 2 Land Speeders with Multi-Meltas. Those are great for secondary objectives, but they also get a reroll from that Master Artisans on their Multi-Melta shots as well. So very consistent Multi-Melta. So yeah, I mean, this is a classic Iron Hands list, and it's really strong. And I think, Mikey clearly is a good player, able to pilot it to a 5-0 record. Congratulations to him. But man, if you're all the people who are whining about Space Marines, play this list. Go to your LGS, play this list against your friends, and then want to play with you, because it is pretty good. I'm not going to say it's like the best list in the game, but it's certainly fighting for the best Space Marine list, especially if you have good lines of fire for that Relic Contemptor to spin up on people. It just removes entire units every time it shoots. We do have a Blood Angels list here. This was Dante Lamardi's Tenant with a jump pack. A little bit. Hammer of Ball as well. That's interesting. So the Relic Thunder Hammer doesn't have a hit roll penalty on it. Cursors and a Helix Gauntlet Infiltrator squad. I think the Infiltrators are going to be a little bit... We're going to see them a little bit more, especially if people are trying to fight against demons. Because Infiltrators are basically just immune to Flamers if the Flamers are deep striking. They can't deep strike within 12, so they're going to be out of range every time they jump in. 3 units of Death Company. I can't tell if we've paid for jump packs here, chat. Have we paid for jump packs here? I imagine we have. 170 points. That feels like a jump packed points cost. Noted in the list. Take a quick look-see. Death Company Marines. So they're base 18, so 5 would be 90. Jump packs cost 3, and power swords cost 5. So they would be 26. That would be 130 for 5. Where do these other points come from? They must have jump packs. Did I do my math right? It'd be 26 points. So for 5, that would be 130. And the Thunderhammer's 12. No, the Thunderhammer's 12 over the sword, I should say. So it should be 142 points, right? Math wrong there? Who knows? Who knows, chat? 170 for that. Oh, it's 4 Thunderhammers and 1 Power Sword. Excuse me. That was the problem. Makes total sense now. Everything makes sense. 4 Thunderhammers and 1 Power Sword. Then 2 of 7 with Thunderhammers and Power Swords. 222 points apiece. 1 Sanguinary Ancient, 2x6 Sanguinary Guard, 1 Assault. What are numbers even? How do numbers work? Game's hard, chat. 40k is too difficult. There's too many 1-digit numbers in it. 5 Assault Marines with 2 Plasma Pistols for the utility. Some Eliminators, love it. With Quake Bolts, so we get reroll once to wound on something you shoot at. That's a fun little wombo combo there, because you can tag something that the Death Company then go kill. But we're really leaning on Fury of the Lost here. With the 7-man Death Company Marines, the 1 CP to get a 5-up damage ignore starts to really add a lot of resilience to these units. Not so much that the unit will just tank all the damage it takes.
probably still lose most of them, but even 2 Death Company Marines, especially once Assault Doctrine ticks over, is able to kill like basically any chaff infantry. And every time you do that, you get, well, every turn you do that you get 3 points. So if the Death Company can, like the first one goes in with the Thunderhammers or something, Forlorn Furies, moves, blows up a tank, dies. You get 4 for that. Then the next one goes in, moves, blows something up, gets almost killed but not entirely, and then kills something else. You get 3 points the first time. Your next turn you take over, you get 3 more points. You're already at 10. Even if all the Death Company die at that point, you probably get another 2. It doesn't even matter if they do any more. As soon as a Death Company unit survives a turn, Fury of the Last just like goes crazy. You're on a pretty good track to max it, which is the reason you take the larger Death Company squads, despite the fact that they're incredibly expensive. But yeah, sweet. I like this list. I like that we're experimenting a little bit with no Whirlwind. It's a little bit sad, but I like the fact that we're experimenting a little bit with Blood Angels list. It's not just the same, 21 Sanguinary Guard, 5 Death Company, rinse and repeat over and over again. I like that we're playing with the composition a little bit to get a little bit more personal. Chaos Demons at 4-1 at this event. 2 Bloodthirsters, chat. Is this all corn? Oh, no. There's a random Sloppy Bile Piper. You do have a corn detachment. So 2 Bloodthirsters and Scarbrand. Some Nurglings. 30... Oh, it's for all these Plague Bearers. Sorry. 10 Bloodletters in this detachment. Nurglings. 20 Plague Bearers. So we have a lot of Bloodletters. We have 20 Bloodletters to jump in off Scarbrand, potentially, because he's Warp Locus. And then charge people. Take their objectives. And then we have Plague Bearers just following up the back with the Bile Paper in order to hold down. Which definitely feels like an issue for Khorne lists, where they don't have any backline objective holding because everything has to be aggressive all the time. You only do damage in melee. You're not that survivable against range. The Plague Bearers certainly are. This is actually a really cool Wombo combo. Also a little thematic, chat, right? Because Khorne and Nurgle are best buds. Nice. But this is 2 lists. We said we had a 5-0 and we have an X and 1, both with Scarbrand in them. Hot damn. Scarbrand also, I guess, like makes those Plague Bearers kind of a little scary, right? Because he gives them +1 attack. They're not very good at hitting. They're what are they? They're 2 attacks at 4+ to hit, right? But when they get an extra attack, they can actually punch pretty well. Because they, if I remember correctly, they also reroll their wounds. Right? Oh no, they get Gene Rot Might. Yeah, so they're 2 attacks. They go to 3 each of Scarbrand's. And then they get Gene Rot Might on there. Oh, there's so the additional attacks have more of a chance of getting auto wounds through. At AP2. I don't know if that's really the Wombo combo, but it certainly, I'm sure, helps at some point. Khorne and Nurgle, verified bros. Nice. The best buddies. So, yeah, Chris Rayner. Congrats for taking it down with a 4-1, X and 1 with a sweet list. Scarbrand again. Moving up, mid-Missouri Maelstrom. Chaos Demons again at the 5-0. Sensing a theme here, chat. Chaos is ascendant today. This is a little bit more of a classic list. Bellicourt, Bloodthirster, Lord of Change. 2x10 Blue Horrors, 10 Blood Letters. Hi. Back. 16 Flamers, the Exalted Flamer, and Bellicourt. So we're not getting any Warp Storm abilities here because we're playing Undivided, but we have all the 3 big boys, the big scary boys. Bloodthirster, Lord of Change. Bellicourt. Playing King of Blades plus Brazen Hide, so using Bloodthirster. I'm interested to see what people's thoughts are, because a lot of people are running Brazen Hide. It doesn't feel to me, like, I guess in some situations it can be pretty annoying. Just if you just spike the 5-ups like pretty well, it seems fine. But on the flip side, getting the Warlord trait on the Lord of Change for -1 to be wounded is a pretty big deal. So having the Lord of Change as your super tank Warlord also, I think. And I know a lot of people in Europe are playing it that way. Obviously in the States we like the Bloodthirster. And it looks like in the UK as well, people are playing the Bloodthirster as tanky as they can. Dan Salmons.
with a Kraken list. So that he is running double. Oh, this is going to be very similar. So we're running single Harpy. I like that. One Spore Assist. So the Spore Assist requires sort of special rules to work correctly. I think I mentioned this on last week's chat, but the US Open events had a house rule that allowed the Spore Assist to be placed within 3 inches of terrain, which it normally can't. But that's what makes the Spore Assist a little bit more competitive. So it's a very competitive option as long as you have special house rules. Fortunately, for the most part, not super great. I have a Harpy with Dermic Symbiosis. So as the Singleton Harpy, although it's playing Stranglethorn Camp, it definitely makes a lot more sense to have the Invulnerable save locked in on it, especially since you can probably hide the remainder of the army. You don't need the Invulnerable save turn 1 from Zoanthropes. They are playing. So you can just leave the Harpy to eat shots. At -2 to be hit and a 4+ Invulnerable save, unless you're playing against like Tau, in which case I think that we start with enough CP you can just reserve it. Yeah, we start with 3 CP. You can put it into reserve and then just bring it in later and say go. Seems fine. But this is double Neurothropes. Unfortunately, no Barb on the second Neurothrope, but I do like 2 Neurothropes, honestly. I'm missing it so much, I'm probably going to go back in my my main list. 2 Neurothropes. I played it back in the day. I cut one for a Broodlord, but man, did I miss that second Neurothrope. The extra use of Warp Siphon and then being able to have a baked-in cast bonus for your psychic actions is so huge. We have a Winged Hive Tyrant, running Reaper of Obliterax and Adaptive Biology, pretty standard. 2 Warriors, 10 Gargoyles, 2 individual Pyrovores, some actions with those boys, 2 Venom Thropes, Alien Cunning Parasite of Mortrax to go and run and steal objectives from people, then a bunch of Raveners. +3 Biovores. So really leaning into the Spore Mine theme here. Spore Assist is going to make 6. The Biomores make 3d3. The Harpy makes a bunch as well. You just get to, especially if the Harpy doesn't have to move up aggressively, it can do the thing we were talking about earlier where it goes into hover mode, moves up 10, drops the binds, runs back, and then up. And they're probably in the same place that the Spore Assist might. You can really stack one area with mine hard. Congratulations to Dan, 5-0. I think we have a Imperium list here. I actually think we talked about this list last week. Kyle McCord's list. But we can talk about it again. It's Militarum plus Grey Knights. I think we lose. We don't lose Hammer, right? Oh no, that's a detachment. Oh no, you do lose Hammer. So no Hammer of the Emperor for these guys, but you do get the benefit of having pretty solid melee coming from the Grey Knights. So 2 Siege Cannon Tank Commanders in Platoon Commander, an Astropath, and a Manticore. Second detachment coming from Prescient Brethren. So we get the action to generate command points and the reroll 1s stratagem. So reroll 1s to hit and wound for a unit for 1 CP. Pretty solid. The Nemesis Grandmaster. Sigil of the Exigent Servant of the Throne. So once per game, 3 up Invulnerable save, and the Sigil to redeploy after you get shot at. Haldor Drago. 2 Interceptor squads, 1 Strike squad, 2. Right, so solid sort of mid-range shooting and good melee, and that's backed up by the 2 tank commanders. I actually played against this list on stream at one point. There's a similar list. It wasn't exactly that, but it was similar. Replay of that in the replay channel. You can go check that one out. Second Neuro plus Genestealers feel a lot better than the Broodlord. Yeah, I agree for sure. The downside is the Genestealers cost you like the Neurothrope plus Genestealers cost you an extra like 70 at 65 points, which is tough to find if you're really scraping the bottom of the barrel. But The Imperial Guards gonna have a mind wipe in their future. Yeah, I think maybe those Grey Knights are just there to kill them all immediately afterward. I do enjoy the irony that Grey Knights are very like heraldic in their appearance, right? They all have the little shields and they all have like the personal heraldry and all that stuff, which historically was to make you more visible on the battlefield, right? But their whole deal is that they're so secret that nobody can know about them. So it's like, why are you painting your armor like bright silver and white and stuff? Why are you trying to make yourself as visible as possible if you're just gonna murder everyone after you show up? Hilarious. Ryan Olsen with an As Your Ynnari list here. Playing classic Hail of Doom, actually. 2 Farseers, a Skyrunner, Kurnos Bow Skyrunner. And some Wind Riders. 1 Falcon. A Vanguard detachment with 3 units of Dire Avengers, 2 units of Howling Banshees, 1 unit of Striking Scorpions, Shining Vipers, and 2 Falcons. So oftentimes we're running the Falcons to drop the Howling Banshees out of. You have Behareth in that detachment as well. The 2 casters. Wow, this is very classic. So it's 3 Falcons, so we can drop pod potentially 3 things out of them. And I guess it's a question of whether we're dropping Dire Avengers or Howling Banshees. Kind of whatever you want, depending on the matchup. And yeah, depending on how far away your ruins in your deployment zone are from relevant areas of the table, so your Howling Banshees can advance and charge onto them. Probably makes a lot of difference. The reason is a secret. And sir, why do you have if you don't want me to see you, why are you painting your armor that way? He's like, I can't tell you. I'd have to kill you. I'll have to kill you anyway. Might as well just tell him then at that point. I guess if I knew, they would come to kill me, so. All right. Ooh, last one of the show, chat. We've been going for almost 2 hours. I was worried this was going to be a short show, but man, these lists were... There's a lot going on here. We have Andrew Gagno, Farside Enclaves, Triple Riptide Battleshoot, Double Shun Shark Bomber. This one does have 2 Devilfish Breacher teams in it. That's sick. Super cool. Plus 2 Cold Star Commanders, Exemplar of the Kalyan, with burst cannons, 1 Precision of the Hunter. And I love this list, chat. This list is so clean. Precision of the Hunter with Missile Pod Plasma Rifle, Puretide, and Gramnir. But we do also have Thermotronic. But we're not playing like Bagel Hunter. We're not playing Fist of the Cold Star. You don't really need it when you have the Thermoneutronic, I think. It helps. But we're playing Pure Tiding. Additional CP. I guess it's because you don't have Ethereals anymore. Right? You can't just play Farflung, Farside Enclaves. So I guess that makes sense. Cold Star Commander, yeah, with all of the... Oh, we have Honor Gauntlet on the second Commander. But who doesn't have rerolls? But he does get a floating reroll. Probably still fine. Yes. No hit rerolls, though. Makes it a little bit scary. Thanks. But Exemplar of the Kalyan on that. So no Exemplar of the Monka. But I guess you don't need it if you're running Riptide Battle. Only thing it would go on is these. But the Crisis Bodyguards are going to bodyguard for these guys regardless of their unit size. So it actually makes the characters a lot harder to get grips with. Really like. If their armor was purple, it was because it works. Yeah. My Grey Knight's armor is all rusty. Kind of cool. I like it. We do have a Chaos Space Marines here. Aiden Berkeley. Iron Warriors. Love it. So we do have Dark Apostle with Illusory Supplication. Cultist Mobs. The 10 Terminators become really problematic with Iron Warriors. And we also have the Plague Marines for the same reason. You can't reroll against them. And then you have Black Ring of Damnation on top of that. So it's Trans Hitman, no rerolls. -1 to wound, no rerolls. The unit basically becomes invulnerable. They're effectively impossible to kill. They also have a Chaos Land Raider in that list as well, probably to deliver those Plague Marines. But for the similar reason, right? Toughness 9, a 1+ armory save, no reroll. That a lot of armies simply don't have the firepower to get rid of this. And then Abaddon the Despoiler. I think Iron Warriors are kind of a sleeper. They're a little, unlike Creations of Bile and Emperor's Children, they're a little passive because they just make their army harder to kill. That's about it. But on the flip side, they're ridiculously tough. Ridiculously tough. We have an Adeptus Sororitas list here. It's Bloody Rose. It does have Celestine in it. 2 units of Arcoflagellants. We have 3 units of Sisters of Repentia, 2 Arcoflagellant units. Lots of trading. 3 Zephyrum squads. Even more trading. Contributors. So a little bit, or not a little bit, a lot less shooting than we typically see, but a lot more trading unit. And then I think the last one we're going to talk about today, Larry Oliver, Tyranid extraordinaire himself. We're back to double Neurothropes, chat. So we're playing High Fleet Kraken, 2 Neurothropes. Done. We've decided. The people have spoken. Double Neurothropes is the way to go. I'm going back to double Neurothropes in my list, for sure, 100%. 2 units of 5 Tyranid Warriors, Death Spitters, Dual Bone Swords. No Venom Cannons on the Adrenal Glands. Flesh Hooks as well. You have a direct guidance in there. So 1 Flesh Hooks on the entire unit. Yeah, 5 times 30 plus, yeah, plus 20. So that gives them the 1 CP strat for +1 to hit. So if 1 unit is direct guidance, the other one can also be +1 to hit as well. And then 2 units of Venom Thropes. You often see those guys just to be able to trade with other people because you get 2 activations of their 3+ you fight last. So having 2 of them, there's only a 1 in 9 chance that they both fail. So you're much better into the melee mirror. But obviously at the expense of having to take, which are a lot of times kind of big do-nothings. I don't really love Venom Thropes, but at least in High Fleet Kraken, they're +1 AP, so they don't hit quite as awkwardly. Then 3 Rupture Cannon Tyrannofix. I think that's what we were talking about earlier, chat, right? It's so many Tyrannofixes. Where are all these Tyrannofixes coming? No Grey Knight lists in there? That's because they nobody knows that the Grey Knights won because they killed everyone. Also, because all the Grey Knights died, because they're not very good. Fine. Maybe the Grey Knights just yeah. They won, but they had to murder everyone who saw them win. So you don't know. The Grey Knights wins just don't get reported. That's the real problem. 3 Rupture Cannon Tyrannofixes, chat. It is X and 1. I wonder what position that this lost in. I imagine it was kind of early. This was what? What did I just do here? Oh, this is Flames of Autumn. Okay, I'm just gonna. Just want to look at the matchups. I'm really interested in these Tyrannofixes, chat. I must be missing something. It is like high AP, right? It's good at shooting at Terminators. There's going to be so many situations where you rock up with a Tyrannofix. So it looks like he lost in the final. One round 6, 1 round 5, round 3. Oh, lost round 3 versus Andrew Gagnon. So yeah, lost against the Farside Enclaves list. All right, well, I think we could have seen that coming. Fair enough. Here's my VCP. So against the Riptide, the Triple Riptide battlesuits that you can't shoot at because they run away. The list that was bringing entirely Tyrannofixes ended up down. What a shocker. Fair enough. I can look through the matchups though. One against Blood Angels. So interesting. Blood Angels I would pick to be a tough matchup. It looks like it destroyed Blood Angels. I mean, I guess the double Venom Throps makes it really difficult to engage. One against Chaos Knights. All right, fair enough. That list does destroy Chaos Knights. That's not. Lost round 3 versus Andrew Gagnos. Lost against the final winner. One against Estus Scions. Oh. No, some people just play into Estus Scions, I guess. One against Photon. Oh yeah, that list is a land fortress Votan list. Enjoy not having a land fortress. The Rupture can't get at it. And one against Gato. Chaos Demons. That would be an interesting one. Chaos Demons I also would peg as something a little bit tough for the Tyrannifexes to play. A ton of flesh hounds though. I think you probably the Venom Throps probably help a ton there. They're very difficult for the Bloodletters to get into. They're good against the Bloodthirster because they win it on 2s. Phase cap it really. And you'd probably hit a phase cap early. Shoot it. Then you can maybe clear it out with the melee. Interesting stuff, chat. Miss all the Space Marine stuff? Yeah, Marines too strong. They won one tournament. We did talk about Space Marines though, chat. That was all in there a couple minutes. 3 Tyrannifex, not a lot of units, and no territorial instinct. Yeah, I think that, I mean, you just play... It must be that you just play the Tyrannifexes forward and you force your opponent to come out and deal with it. Great with melee. It definitely feels like a... It's a much different list than you see. That is... I don't know, really interesting. I don't know. I think that it feels to me like... I mean, Tyranid Gunlines, I think, certainly have a place, but I would expect to see them more with a Turvagon, like a Turvagon Wombo combo in there as the front line. So you add you probably play Leviathan, you play 30 Termagants, you play the Turvagon behind them, and that just like sort of prevents anyone from getting into the heart of your gun line with melee. And then you can play Problem Solvers and you can fit like 2 Tyrannifexes behind that. And that feels like the way that I would want to be playing an online list. But obviously, High Fleet Kraken gives you so much more flexibility in what you do with the other stuff that might just be that, you know, he's using the Tyrannifexes as 600 points of distraction. And the rest of the list is actually where the scoring comes from. Happen a lot. Anyway, chat. I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up there. Woo! It's been a good one. Lots of good discussion we had today, chat. Talked about a lot of really interesting lists. I think that we're really seeing the meta shape up. I'm gonna stick with my faction ranking that I put up earlier. I do think that we're in a pretty healthy spot, but I think that Chaos Demons, especially Chaos Demons, you know, both by themselves and in addition to the Chaos Space Marines, are plus Harlequins, plus maybe like Harlequins / Ynnari even, plus Tyranids are certainly top 3. Adeptus Sororitas really kicking up there, but we also see a lot of these lists from Tau, tons of Tau, a little bit of Necrons, a little bit of the other Chaos sub-factions as well. All of those doing. And so, yeah, I think that we're in one of the most, I don't know if, I'm not going to say like sort of most balanced, but certainly most diverse metagames that we've. Here probably would play 1 Tyrannifex down and add Raveners. How does one play with Demon, Flamers, and Fate Skin? Mostly just, and it depends a lot on whether you're playing in Demons or in Chaos Space Marines. If you're playing Chaos Space Marines, you generally deep strike like 2 of them, and then I don't know, they're very straightforward. If your opponent has something you want to shoot at, you just deep strike them next to it, cast +1 to wound on them, and then shoot it to death, and it dies. This is generally how it's going to happen. And you do that 3 times, and then you've generally up like 200 or 300 points in attrition. Your opponent has to deal with 3+ invulnerable save. So yeah. Anyway, ooh, All right, I'm gonna wrap things up officially here, chat. So we got a couple of exciting things coming up. You can expect some videos from me over the next couple of days. I do have that giveaway we mentioned at the top of the video. I did not have a chance to work it out last week. Hopefully, I will do it this week. All depends on how much time I end up having. So that's going to be, giving away a bunch of boxes for 40k subscribers, which is great. So big thanks to everyone who helped make that happen. I have on the Purple channel, I have a pod finals tomorrow. It should be fun. So that's going to be 7:30 p.m. US Eastern. We're going to be doing some live commentary, which will be great. Come hang out with me over there. I'm also have a ton of video scheduled over on the replay channel this week. So if you go jump in over there, it's probably 6 or 7 videos coming out quick succession over the next couple of days. Go check out a bunch of games and a bunch of live commentary on that channel. And otherwise, keep it classy, folks. Thanks everybody who dropped super chats and joined the membership and stuff. There was a lot of generosity in the chat, and I really appreciate you guys. All right, I'm gonna hop off. Thanks, everyone.